In the late autumn of 865 AD, a massive Scandinavian force landed on the shores of East Anglia. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle recorded their arrival under a specific name, the Great Heathen Army, the Great Heathen Army. Later sagas and popular histories have heavily romanticized this event. They depict a chaotic horde of bloodthirsty berserkers, driven by a desire for vengeance over a slain leader. The historical and archaeological records indicate a highly disciplined reality. This was a structured, multinational military coalition, drawing veterans from across Denmark, Norway, and Sweden, operating under a unified command. To achieve this, the commanders implemented strict logistical frameworks, exploited existing local infrastructure, and utilized targeted political liquidation to break regional resistance. The collapse of medieval England only makes sense when we look past the folklore of wild raiders. We have to examine this force as a highly sophisticated expeditionary military, solving complex problems of supply and mobilization. Prior to 865, Scandinavian military strategy relied almost entirely on rapid, seasonal extraction. Fleets conducted hit-and-run coastal raids, targeting wealthy, geographically isolated, and undefended centers like the Priory at Lindisfarne. These early fleets operated under severe logistical constraints. They lacked the supply lines required to push deep inland, and their forces could not survive the harsh northern English winters. They had to retreat across the sea before the weather turned. The Great Heathen Army moved beyond rapid extraction, transitioning into a model of sustained multi-year occupation. To make this leap, the coalition had to solve three absolute requirements: permanent inland mobility, deep supply lines, and winter survivability. Shifting from a raiding pattern to a model of permanent conquest meant abandoning their reliance on fast ships. They had to capture and build permanent agrarian infrastructure on English soil. Upon landing in East Anglia, the army faced an immediate logistical hurdle. They needed to move a massive, heavy infantry force deep into hostile, landlocked territory. Instead of marching into immediate combat, the coalition executed a critical operational maneuver. They negotiated a temporary peace in East Anglia, extracting a massive tribute of local horses from the population. This mass requisitioning solved their mobility problem instantly. They converted a slow-moving, sea-borne infantry into a highly mobile striking force that could outmaneuver local militias across vast distances. To survive the winter without returning to Scandinavia, the coalition engineered forward operating bases. The reality of these camps required massive manual labor. Soldiers had to dig deep defensive earthworks and erect heavy timber palisades in the freezing mud. We can see the physical footprints of these bases today at St. Wiston's Church in Repton. Excavations reveal how the Viking coalition deliberately incorporated an existing Anglo-Saxon stone building directly into their defensive perimeter to save labor and maximize security. By securing local cavalry and constructing winter operating bases, the coalition solved the fundamental limitations of inland mobility and year-round force projection. In the autumn of 866, the army mobilized and marched north into the Kingdom of Northumbria. Their arrival coincided with an active Anglo-Saxon civil war. Two rival claimants were fighting for the throne, and the coalition exploited this division to conquer the northern territory without facing a unified defense. This map shows their route. Their target was York, founded centuries earlier as the Roman fortress of Eboracum. They utilized the existing Roman road network to bypass rough terrain, executing the targeted seizure of a strategic operational hub. The army immediately militarized the city, repairing decaying Roman walls to establish a centralized, defensible headquarters. With the military hub secured, they implemented proxy governance. In conquered territories like Mercia, they installed puppet kings, such as an Anglo-Saxon named Ceolwulf, to administer the subjugated populations on their behalf. Proxy governance kept the primary Viking fighting force completely mobile. They did not tie down their troops in bureaucratic tasks, yet they could still command the extraction of massive wealth, known as Danegeld, through installed leaders. This hoard of silver ingots and hacked coins illustrates the industrial scale of their economic extraction. Wealth flowed out of the local economy and directly into the coalition's war chest. By leveraging pre-existing Roman infrastructure and proxy leaders, the coalition successfully established a self-funding, highly defensible occupation model. Consolidating power also required the systematic removal of rival state executives, specifically the public executions of King Aelle of Northumbria and King Edmund of East Anglia. This 12th century manuscript copies an earlier account of King Edmund's death. It frames his execution entirely as a religious martyrdom, asserting that he was tied to a tree and shot with arrows after refusing to renounce Christ. Monastic authors possessed a monopoly on the written record. They actively rewrote these events, emphasizing Christian piety to obscure the reality of total military defeat. Stripped of this religious framing, these executions reveal a precise military function. The coalition was conducting targeted political liquidations. These events were heavily militarized spectacles. Shield walls held back the subdued local populations, forcing them to physically witness a violent end of their state. The public execution of a rival king is a highly calculated tool of statecraft. It permanently breaks the existing governmental hierarchy and enforces total civilian submission. The combination of forced mobility and winter forts and political liquidation systematically broke the Anglo-Saxon militia system, which was too slow to respond. Over 14 years, the kingdoms of Northumbria, East Anglia, and Mercia collapsed. The coalition drew a unified boundary across the eastern and northern half of the island. This territory became the Danelaw, eclipsing their initial landing site by tens of thousands of square miles. Behind this border, the Viking forces transitioned out of their winter camps. They divided the captured land among their ranks, pivoting from a mobile occupying army to an entrenched agrarian landholding elite. The establishment of the Danelaw completed the transformation of a sea-borne military invasion into permanent, generational state capture. By 878 AD, the campaign had produced a definitive output: the total, violent restructuring of the island's geopolitical power dynamics. This collapse was the result of superior logistics, infrastructure exploitation, and targeted political violence. The map now reflected a stark reality. The Kingdom of Wessex, governed by Alfred the Great, stood entirely alone as the sole surviving Anglo-Saxon state. Wessex's ultimate survival required adopting the exact mechanics used by their invaders. Alfred instituted a standing army and a network of permanent fortifications to match the Scandinavian logistical framework. The coalition's logistical and strategic persistence permanently forced the evolution of the modern English state.